We'll just jump right in. We'll start this thing off. I think the topic that we're talking about today, we're going to start off talking about today, is really making the most of your professional partner relationships, right? So you guys might have your preferred lender, your preferred home inspector, your preferred home stager, your preferred real estate attorney. But what are those people supposed to be doing, for you? What are those relationships supposed to be doing for you? I have a few ideas that I've written down here, a few thoughts about what I'm looking for out of my professional partners, but wanted to hear from you guys, really both. I think the people on the call that really don't have their team set up, which I think it's really important to have that team, especially when you're doing some volume, and just to make your life easier and the process easier. But then also to the people on the call who are more experienced and have that and do have that tight team set up, and what that looks like, and why you love working with the attorney you work with, or why you love working with the lender that you're working with, and what they do that really goes above and beyond just someone that's there ready to take an order from you and work. So does anybody have any thoughts? Anybody want to jump in either way to start off?
Sure.
Thanks, Bob.
Yeah. It's important to have a team. I've got a team of preferred vendors. You being one of them, by the way. Just as an aside, Bob jumped into a deal last night, second time around, and solved it because I can rely on him. So I'm just saying it because that's a real example. 9 o'clock last night, P&S due today, jumped in and made it work. So that's it. But I think just overall, our objective is to work with a set, and you can't rely just on one, a couple of key, I call them partners that you're familiar working with, have relationship, can depend on, and that's it. So for me, it is, the most important is the attorney and the lender. I mean, you can expand that out, but those are the prime two, and I look to that. And so that's a good part, and I rely on them, and it works quite well. To answer the second question is what I expect that out of them. What I'd hope to do is to find a way to, because private business, get more business going the other way, opportunities. And I've got to figure out how to, and that's not something that works as well. I mean, the challenge is obviously we all have many, number of people, and it's tough to, get business. But that's what I'd like to get some way, is to get that more of a, not just a vendor relationship, true partnership that they're involved in our process and all the way through. That's for me what's important. And I have it.
Anybody else want to add to that? Comment on that?
Yeah, well, I think some of the top elements of myself with my business relationships with different partners is the communication that takes place. Having strong communication so that expectations are met, just understanding where we are in the process and working together as a team, so that the end result is you have a happy client that you're going to continue to work with in terms of referrals.
Right on. Good. What else, guys? I think, how many of us, oh, go ahead, miss.
I was just going to say that, in a market like this where sellers can so easily make missteps, when they hear all the positive stuff, they have to be careful about the missteps. And, same thing with the buyer competition as well, that when you have partners who you trust and are absolutely the best in the business, who you have strong relationships with, not only can we anticipate as the professionals in the transaction, what to anticipate the outcome to look like, but you can make your best effort to, impress that on the agent on the other side. And often that will lead to your success. Has the buyer market ever been more competitive than this? No, definitely not. And often offers are accepted or declined based on, who the lender is. So my relationship with Bob is the most important in my buyer success plan. And then that's backed up by, you know, great attorneys who he and I have always worked with and we know can do a great job. But basically in a market like this that is just so exceptionally competitive, you have to make the most of those professional opportunities. When you have them in place, you know what to anticipate. You can talk with your clients about that. You can talk with the realtors on the other side about that. And it just makes for a much better transaction for everyone, as well as increasing your chances of success. So, you know, what else can you do to help yourself except that? It's great.
Right, exactly. Yeah. I think, you know, I think we have all different volume, you know, all different realtors on the call with different volume. But, you know, really once you start having a few deals going at the same time, under contract, under agreement, a few buyers, a few sellers, you know, that sort of thing. Man, if you don't have a preferred group to work with, that team set up, just think about how much more chaotic your life will be, right? Your professional life will be, and even your personal life as a result will be if you don't have that team. If you have 6 transactions going at the same time with 6 different lenders and 6 different attorneys, man, that becomes difficult, right? If you're looking for updates, you're making 12 phone calls just for updates on your different transactions, right? And that doesn't even take into account maybe looking for updates. You know, we know that each one of our transactions are a domino. So what if you're checking up on the transaction that has to happen before your transaction can happen too, right? But if you have even, you know, half or 2/3 of your transaction together with your team, you can knock each one of those updates out in one phone call or one email, right? Whereas you're doing a lot more chasing around when you don't have relationships with those people. Definitely. What do you think, Sim?
I think that's true. And, you know, one of the things that I do a lot of like first time home buyers, seminars and things like that. And I think it makes a lot of buyers feel really comfortable when they know they're working with a team from the get-go. So we always present ourselves, myself, the realtor and the attorney, kind of like a package deal. And most buyers that we work with really love that because they can see from the get-go how well the 3 of us jive together, how familiar we are with each other and our processes, and they feel comfortable from the beginning versus, you know, them just having to they have to find a realtor, they have to find a lender, they don't even know what the attorney does, so they don't know where to find them. And, you know, by presenting ourselves as this like power trio, it has really worked to our benefit in getting them to come on as our clients and then also having them have a successful transaction as well.
Beautiful. Yeah, I think that goes a long way. You know, it's a one-stop shop, right? For everything that buyer or seller needs.
Yep.
You know, I got a guy, right? Good. Yep. Let me ask you guys this, and I'm bringing this up as an affirmation. I think it's something that I need to do, not because I'm preaching and say that I do it every time, because I work with a lot of people on this call, and obviously we haven't done it. But I'm going to ask this question. How many of the people on this call have sat down maybe at the beginning of the year with their preferred lender and their preferred attorney and mapped out a game plan of how you expect your client experience to go? And keep in mind that I'm not talking about customer service, or we're not talking about great service. We're talking about creating an experience, right? And I really think it's important to map out that experience and how you expect that client experience to be for your clients with your team, because that way, if it's standardized, if it's systematized, everything happens the same way, or it should anyway. And when that happens, balls don't get dropped. I think balls get dropped because, you know, there's chaos in our fields, in our industries, and there's volume in our industries. And we forgot to do something because we're just trying to jump on the most recent hottest fire, right? And jumping on it before it gets out of control, and our other transactions suffer as a result. How many of us have sat down with our attorneys and our realtors or lenders at the same time and talked about expectations? You know, you guys know how your attorneys run a closing, but aside from that, what else happens in the 45 to 60 days prior to that, right? What does that look like? You know, there could be something that a way that your attorney delivers their buyer's representation, you know, consult, if they even do it at all, that totally blows you guys away, that you're almost offended by, and you didn't even know that your great attorney did it, right? Or the way that your lender talks with your clients. You don't even know, you might not know some of the things that I say or Sam says or whatever that just could send the buyer sideways. So
That's excellent, Bob. That's an excellent idea. I mean, you always want to do it. We've done it sporadically, but to actually have a session, because we have a process. We have a very specific process for contract to close, and I've said, gee, we ought to share that with our attorneys, our lenders, and we don't. So what you're suggesting would be an incredible idea.
And very easy too, right? Especially when you're doing your business plan at the beginning of the year, or really now, right?
Now.
Year. So this is how our experience should go,
Bob, to be honest, I haven't done that, and it sounds so sensible, but I can't explain why I haven't. I think just thinking back, when I've actually had conversations, say, with a particular law firm, it was prompted because things didn't go well.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
So I had to have a sit down and explain, hey, this is what my client said to me about their experience. So what can we do going forward so that this doesn't happen again, and that we provide a positive experience for the client? But I feel I need to be proactive in your suggestion.
Right.
Great.
Can I pipe in here?
Yeah, go ahead, Kristen.
So I've always sat down with anyone that I'm going to partner with, whether it be a lender or an attorney, just because I know how I am. I know how I like to work, and I don't have sometimes the patience if things aren't going right. So, I sit down, I have expectation conversations, and I'm always like, hey, listen, this is how I work. If this doesn't work for you, then that's totally fine. We don't have to partner up. I have found that sometimes I do more of the talking on what I'm looking for, and they just yes me to death, like, oh yeah, of course, yeah, absolutely. And then that's not really what happens. So I've learned to really just ask them questions to see how they're going to answer, to see if that's something that's going to work for me.
Right.
So just a little kind of tip there, just because again, I think a lot of partners want to work with us, right? And that's great, but are they going to be able to service it or be as professional as you are as an agent? Because as we all know, not everybody is as professional as somebody may want them to be. And that reflects on you as the agent. If you're referring these people out and they're not to your standard of how you work, that can really hurt you in the business, because at the end of the day, it's always on you as the agent. It's like when you're at a restaurant, when if the food comes out bad, it's like the first person you want to blame is the waitress or waiter, but like they didn't cook it, right? So, you just have to keep that in mind and make sure that you pick the right people for you and how you like to work.
Definitely. You're right about 100%.
And as a buyer's agent, I just want to say that, and specifically someone who's, relatively newer, it's important to get those relationships solidified right away. I mean, I was lucky enough that when I joined Gill Group, they had these systems in place. And from my previous job, I worked at my father's law firm. So I had some recommendations for attorneys and lenders, but specifically, buyer's agents or even anyone who's just starting out, getting those relationships so you can make a positive impact on your client in the first meeting. If someone's not pre-approved, you can go and say, hey, I know this lender. I'm working with them. They're highly recommended. They'll take care of you, rather than, just go search the internet, find out, apply for a pre-approval with, Quicken Loans. I've seen a couple of those, and I've had a couple transactions. I think it was with you, Bob, where these people had trouble getting pre-approved with other lenders. They just didn't vet them properly. They didn't take the time to care for them. And then you guys helped them out and were able to get them through the transaction. So it's important to have those relationships, especially I think for people who are just starting. I mean, people who have been in the business, obviously it's important as well. But if you're a solo agent specifically, you want to get those solidified so you can make a big impact on your buyers. Because most likely the people who you're going to be meeting with, I mean, if you just start out in the business, you're either going to be cold calling, you're not going to know them, or, you know, there's going to be a sphere of influence, and those people, you know, those people may have their own recommendations. You may feel uncomfortable kind of trying to tell them what to do unless you're really comfortable with, you know, a specific lender or attorney and you have those systems in place. So.
Definitely. And, you know, just in talking about that, and I had a note about that too, Matt. It's okay to have a relationship with a few different vendors based on what their niche is, right? So if you have an average sales price of $2 million and you're working out of Newton and, you know, Chestnut Hill or whatever, you're probably not going to be working with the same lender that someone who, you know, dominates the market over in Avon, Randolph, and Brockton might use, not because, you know, I guess of the demographic, but primarily because of, you know, there's a big difference between people that specialize in in-house jumbo loans versus, let's say, low down payment FHA type options, right? Those people probably be those lenders that do a lot of volume up in the Newton area, let's say, would probably be, you know, terrible to use as a regular, consistent first-time home buyer that has 2 or 3 jobs, that's buying, you know, their first home as a, you know, condo and a non-warrantable condo on, you know, in Avon, you know, something like that, right? Whereas if they even have 50% to put down a $3 million home in, you know, in Newton, it's an entirely different banker that they're going to be working with, an entirely different program, an entirely different process. So having a few different relationships that matches what your client's looking for, I think is really important too.
Yeah, I do that with, especially with insurance. Like I have one specific guy that I work with who, for first-time home buyers, he is unbelievable. He basically acts like their dad and takes them under his wing and walks them through why they're getting insurance and what it covers and what to do if you need, like if something comes up. And he even walks as far as to like, this is how you can save on your electric bill, like all these different things. And my first-time home buyers adore him. And it's so cool because they end up referring their friends to him too. And then I have another woman I work with who, anytime I'm working with a female borrower, I know that she will make them feel so comfortable. I work with a lot of single female borrowers, and Marissa always makes them feel like so comfortable, walks them through the process, nice and easy. And, you know, they're already stressed out enough and nervous. So she really helps like calm their nerves and helps them along the way too. So I do that specifically with insurance referral partners.
Yeah, for sure.
It's cool.
And you probably do that with attorney too, I assume, you know, just think about the personality fit.
Oh yeah, definitely.
You know?
Yep.
And we are lucky to be working with a lot of, I mean, our group, you know, Sam, me, and us here on the call, we're lucky to work with a lot of really good attorneys. I mean, there's 5 or 6 that we could rattle off right now that we would, I'm sure, all agree that we'd allow to do our own, you know, transaction if we were buying a house, you know. So we're really lucky about that. But they all have different personalities too that are different. What about some of the +1 services that your favorite vendors do on a regular basis? Last week we had Jeff Formica from Creed and Formica on the call, and one of the things he mentioned that kind of went, you know, he just passed over quickly was one of the things that he does when he's doing when he has a title order and he has a buyer's rep is he's putting in his calendar when their commitment date is due, but he also sends out invites to the realtor and to the lender for them to accept that into their calendar too. And it's something that Jeff just has on autopilot. We don't miss commitment dates because, because I have Kate on my team that just watches my dates, basically. That's her job, is to watch over my pipeline. But it's really nice that Jeff does that on autopilot, and he follows up as a result of it too. So he gets his reminder and he sends it right back on, you know, asks us about it all, status of a commitment all the time. So things like that is just Jeff does his regular routine. Do any of your other vendors have things like that really make the experience better for you and your clients?
Yes, Bob, I see it. I see a couple of, and I'm trying to think who. I would think I think it might be Fairway Mortgage. A couple that actually have a process, and that they're just alerting us proactively when something's happening.
Like
And
appraisals received and that sort of thing.
you got it there. And, what would be, the ideal world is because we're all working, we all have our process and some way they need to dovetail. And wouldn't it be great if these can be all one, so we're not working on different calendar? You could end up sharing it. You have a shared calendar because we're all talking about the same one client. And
Right.
everybody's rolling. I mean, that's a lot to ask, but something like that. But I see a couple who actually do that. And I'm impressed when I see that. I go, they get their act together.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're right about that. And that's just something that can be systematized. And then anything they do on top of that is a bonus, but at least it's something they can do. It's consistent. I think that's wonderful.
How about putting it? I mean, we're a command fan. We're into command and we're using it. I think command can handle it. I mean, we're putting all of our process in there. Maybe there's a way to do some sharing. So I just sent you, Bob. I just sent you an email, just saying I'd like to get. We're already in our planning phase. I'd like to get together with you, figure out what other partners should join, and maybe because we're in planning, and maybe just have a discussion about what might be possible.
That would be wonderful.
Yeah.
And really, and I think it would be as simple truly as mapping out what the process looks like. It's almost like, you remember the game Chutes and Ladders, right? Where you're kind of following that trail, Chutes and Ladders. And it's kind of the same thing. The home buying process can be that same sort of thing. And I really just think that, between us, the Gill Group, and the attorney, as long as we follow that same path, everything's wonderful. I think that's really important.
Good. Okay, so the request is already out to you. Thanks. That's great.
That's it. Let's get it done. I like it. Bob, you had mentioned earlier, maybe getting some more referral business or referral opportunities from your partners. And I think that obviously is something that a lot of us, think about when we have this relationship. I send, 15 deals over to a title attorney, and last year I didn't get any. What's up with that? What do you think about, and I'll actually tell you guys a story. I met with there's a realtor out of Rentham. I met with maybe about 10 years ago, and she's a huge realtor now. She's a rock star. She came into the business. She's about the same age as me, came around in the business a few years maybe after me. And I remember having lunch with her one day, and again, this was about 10 years ago. And the first question she asked me was, can I count on you for referrals? If we're going to work together, can I count on you for referrals? And at that point, I didn't get angry. I was actually kind of insulted, right? And I just shut down. For me, at that point, the lunch was over. And it was a huge mistake because what she did was basically ask me the equivalent of, hey, mortgage guy, what's your rate, right? You asked that because you have no other, you don't know anything else to ask. She didn't know what else to ask. For me, I shut down because I was thinking that, if I just gave her 3, buyers or sellers a year, I'd count on all her referrals, even if I didn't know what the heck I was doing from a mortgage perspective, right? So I took offense to that because I really take pride in the experience that we provide and the track record that we have. So I just shut down. But I should have really educated her on the importance and the value behind the no babysitting rule, for example, that we have, which what I tell my team all the time is, once a client is passed on over to us from anybody, a past client referral, or you guys, realtors, and the purchase and sale agreement signed, your job is done as realtors. Your job now can't be to babysit the file you already have under agreement. When you refer your client to a lender or to an attorney or to whomever, at that point, you're passing it off, right? You're handing the ball off, and now you can go work on getting that new business. Right? There's real value there. So if we could have a set it and forget it relationship where I'm going to update you on all of your the status of all the transactions we have under agreement. We're going to make the dates. Your clients are going to be happy because you know what the experience is going to look like. It's the same for every client. Now that frees up more time for you to go out and get more business. So yeah, I could give you 3 deals a year, but if all the other deals that we're working on together are code reds all the time, those extra 3 deals really going to be worth it? The answer is no. 10 deals, the answer is no, if it's really chaotic. But if I can do such a good job that part, the under agreement part's off of your plate, Now you can focus on new business. How much more business is that going to make for all of us, you know? And I think that's where a vendor's real value comes into play, right? With free up time for you to be more efficient, for you to be more productive, for me to be more productive, for us, right? What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, no, I agree with that, Bob. And in fact, you know, as you were kind of talking through that, it just made me think of some past transactions where once that P&S did get signed, you have that service that you pay for that sends out the updates. I get copied on, but the updates go out to the buyer client, and just kind of explaining, here's where we are in the transaction. Some of them are kind of like little videos, explanations. But I think that is extremely valuable because it's keeping the client informed, and it offers me the peace of mind knowing that we're heading to the finish line, and then allows me to focus on, you know, finding new business, which is what I should be doing. And I guess I'm not sure why other lenders don't use that type of service as well. But when I'm talking about positioning myself with somebody and what sets me apart from other realtors, I'd like to be able to have like a total package offering that includes my team of professionals, and this is what we offer, and this is what you get from Bill Stone's team in terms of service and what you can expect. The other part of that is holding the different parties accountable for their responsibilities and maintaining the strong communication. Sometimes I kind of like, I'll check in with a client and I'll say, hey, so I got an update from the attorney yesterday. I'm not sure if you saw that email, but things seem to be going well. And the response I heard back from the client was, yeah, well, you know, they really haven't been forthcoming with information or whatever they told me. So my feeling may be a lot different than what the client is experiencing. And there's that, I guess there needs to be some sort of a check-in in terms of the process, just to make sure everybody's on the same page and the expectations are being met. So, and I'm not sure how, if there's methods that we can talk about to work toward that, you know, perfect solution to offer the client.
Probably, like we said in the beginning, and sitting down with your team in the beginning as you're planning to go over what the process is on their end.
Right, and like what Kristen was saying, so, you know, like she met with an attorney and they said, oh yeah, we'll do that, yeah, we'll do that. But then when, you know, the rubber hits the road, it's like, are they going to hold up to their commitments and what they say they'll deliver? Right.
And sitting in, you know, if one pet peeve that I have, let's say with real estate attorneys, is the ones that do charge for buyer's rep fees, putting the fees on the closing disclosure without first reviewing that with the buyer up front. Mm-hmm. Right? So they just get the P&S from you, they review it, they strike some things out, they add some things to it, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And then they fire it off to be signed, and the buyer says, yep, that's good. And at that point, the buyer may not even know that that is what the attorney's considering a buyer's consult, right? Like, I'd really want to know, if you're going to charge the buyer for a buyer's consult, fine. You know, I'm okay with it if you have the adult conversation up front about, here's what our buyer's consult would look like. Here are the benefits of it. Here's the cost. Do you think that it's, you know, that's something you want? Yes, that's something I want. All right, that's good. Let's go for it. But how many times do we get to the closing, or you guys get a phone call saying that, you know, my cash to close now is $700 higher than what I expected, and it's because there was a buyer's rep fee on there that the borrower never even knew was coming. The borrower didn't even know they had a buyer's representation, you know, with an attorney, right? So that's one of the reasons that for me, I just kind of, that's a big pet peeve of mine when I see a buyer's rep fee on a closing disclosure, not because it wasn't earned, but because oftentimes it just wasn't discussed with the buyer up front. And I don't care if it's $5,000. You know, if Jeff or Micah or any one of our attorneys sits down with the buyer and says, I will be your attorney here, I can represent you as the buyer, and all your legal matters here pertaining to this transaction, it's going to be $5 million. If an adult says, sure, $5 million, that's a steal, that's a great deal, put it on the closing disclosure, great. But if you don't have that discussion up front, to me, it's lazy, it's unprofessional, and it's it's not in the best interest of any of our clients. So I just think that that's really important. When have we sat in on, or have you guys ever sat in on a buyer's representation consult with either your lender or your attorney? I think those are things that we could do too, just to see how they work, and maybe you pick the client that wouldn't mind you sitting in on the transaction with them.
Mhm.
It would be over a Zoom call like this one, most likely, or a three-way phone call. There's not a ton of personal information that's being shared on those calls, right? So I just think that, that's something that, could give you insight, sort of a peek behind the kimono, right? As far as how that person works. And that's something I think we should all do, just so you see when you're handing your client off to one of these people, what it looks like for them, what that client experience looks like.
Yeah, I mean, when we sign a listing agreement, we state right there what our fee is that we'll be paid.
Yeah.
I do find that certain attorneys don't want to talk about their fees. They don't want to tell me what their fee is in certain cases. And it's usually because it's a much higher fee than what other attorneys may charge. But yeah, I think that I've experienced a few times where clients discovered that looking at the CD toward the end of the process, a bit of a surprise in terms of certain fees that they weren't expecting. And I think that should be a disclosure.
And part of the reason that goes, is like nails down a chalkboard for me, is because when the fees and the closing disclosure go up, who's the first person they call? The evil lender, because I increased the closing costs. I'm like, no, that's not Bob Malone's, Saturday night, going out kind of getting awesome fee. That's, the buyer's representation fee, and they don't even know what that is,
Right.
So yeah, you're really right about that, Bill. And
in our cases, we always have our clients hire the attorney, whether it's whether it's the lender's attorney, whether it's the bank's attorney that is representing them on both sides, or whether it's independent. We always have them put them together, and they hire them. And first thing we say to them, because they say, well, what would it cost? So ask the attorney. You expect to have it. So that's a given with us.
And you ask what it's going to cost, but then you also ask what you're going to get for that cost.
Of course.
Sure.
I mean, yeah, it's some of us on the call go to Starbucks every day, and we know that we're going to pay twice as much for coffee there as we would at Dunkin' Donuts, and we're going to spend twice as much at Dunkin' Donuts as we would if we went to Cumberland Farms for coffee, right? But you make that decision because you think you're getting a higher quality product, and if the attorney is going to tell me it's going to be $1,000, but here's what I'm getting every single time, then that's fine. And it's up to the client to make that decision,
Oh yeah, no, I never direct the client, one way. I just tell them, here's the contact information, call this attorney, and they'll tell you what their fees are and what their services that they offer. Right. But whether those questions are asked and whether that information is provided is another story, because I'm not sitting in on that. So.
Right. And checking in with your, with the client once in a while, just, hey, tell me, what did that look like? What did that consultation look like if you weren't able to, or if you just wanted to check in, a couple of months after we have our beginning of the year meeting where we lay out our, game plan, our roadmap for our client experience with all the people on our team. Maybe a couple of months after that, you're checking in with your client and saying, hey, what did that client consult look like, to make sure that they're hitting, that vendor is hitting on all the important things they promised they'd hit on every single time.
So Bob, one question I do get asked every so often by, I guess, buyer clients and sometimes sellers is, what are our closing costs going to be? And on the buyer side, I said, well, your lender can definitely answer those questions. Is there anything documented that gives a general idea of what certain closing costs they may expect?
Well, I could easily give you that, and our closing costs are the same for every transaction with the exception of owner's title insurance and lender's title insurance, because those vary depending on the loan amount and the purchase price, right? But aside from that, our costs are very static. Now, here's the long-winded answer, I think, Bill, to that to that question is when most people ask you or they ask me, hey, what are your closing costs? They're not really asking what are your closing costs. What they're asking is, what is my cash to close going to be? So in that case, I always tell them the cash to close consists of three things: your down payment, which of course makes up the majority of your cash to close, and your closing costs, so things like lender fees, attorney fees, city and state recording fees, that sort of thing. But on top of that, you have your prepaid items, and those can vary dramatically because that includes, if you're escrowing, maybe 5 months worth of property taxes, 15 months worth of homeowners insurance. Homeowners insurance, by the way, you haven't even secured yet because you don't even have a house. Or if you do have it, it's under agreement. You haven't reached out to your insurance company yet. So that's why, our closing costs are always, for the most part, set in stone. But I let clients know that if anything, we have to take a guess on the prepaid items, on the escrows. And if anything, we try to be as conservative as possible with those estimates. But generally speaking, on a $500,000 house in our area, $600,000 home in our area, you're probably looking at anywhere from $10,000 to $11,000 between closing costs, optional owner's title insurance, first year's premium for your homeowner's insurance, 5 months worth of property taxes, and some random per diem interest is normally about $10,000 to $11,000.
Okay. Well, I don't know if it exists, but if you do have something documented that kind of just sort of explains that I could have on hand, that would be helpful.
I love it.
That would be helpful, Bob. It's kind of the template, not the cost, but just what, I'm sorry, Melissa, but what are all the items? Because the difference between closing costs and prepaid costs, people get those confused. So that'd be helpful. Sorry, Melissa.
All the time. Yeah, they really do. And that's really what they're asking most of the time is, hey, how much am I going to pay out of pocket here? Right. And they don't care, if I tell them their closing costs are going to be $4,500 and they have to come to the closing with $11,000, they don't care that extra $6,500 or whatever it is, taxes and insurance. They're blindsided by that because I didn't set their expectations properly. I answered their question, but I didn't set their expectations properly,
Yeah.
So what about, as we're thinking about our own attorneys or our own relationships, what are there other professions out there that could add you or us to their team? Things that they do on a daily basis that if we were added to their team, just like Carla or, Andy or Alicia, Jeff or Micah are on our team, the first thing, if somebody needs a title order, first person I'm thinking about calling is Jeff or Micah, right? Or Alicia Cummings, Ariel, some great attorneys out there. Are there other professions out there that deal with our clients every single day and they just maybe haven't thought about building their own team? What types of professions out there could add us to their team?
I would say plumbers and electricians.
Yeah, definitely.
Because, I mean, they're very busy because there's not a lot of them. And, they know a lot of people. They know a lot of contractors. They know a lot of people in different, and all aspects of home building or servicing. And they typically will know if somebody's, fixing up the house to, put the house on the market. Or even general contractors.
Definitely. So tradespeople.
Yep.
We've also, we've talked a lot about, estate planning attorneys, family law attorneys, CPAs, obviously, right? Reverse mortgage specialist. If my senior mom or dad have a reverse mortgage and, mom's the last one in the house, she passes away, I'm probably as the son going to reach out to that reverse mortgage person and ask, hey, is the bank going to come and take my house away tomorrow because my mom's not alive anymore, right? So having a reverse mortgage person that you can rely on and to send you some business, I think that's somebody that could really help out a lot. Even if, just like me, they're spread out all over the place geographically, right? So I'm licensed in Maine, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Florida, Connecticut, pretty much it, right? New Hampshire, if I didn't say that. So maybe if I'm a reverse mortgage specialist and one of my clients in upstate, Maine passes away and they're looking for a realtor, yeah, Missy, you're not going to go ahead and list that house tomorrow, but that's a great referral opportunity, So I think that a lot of these could really help. I don't know if any of you guys have introduced yourself to your town's local VA rep, but that could go a long way too, man. A lot of people, when a lot of people don't think about the VA reps anymore, and I haven't even seen my VA rep. We actually have a newer one in Hanover. I've never even met the guy, but people newer to town, maybe they just got discharged from the military, they're thinking about moving in, they're going to reach out to their VA rep, and that VA rep could be a good, referral source for you. This kind of goes along the same lines as what you talked about, Kristen, but someone who maybe owns or runs a storage facility or, dumpster trash type drop off and pickup, I think could go a long way too. Funeral directors, these are just all things that we could do to, to grow our, to grow our business, to grow our relationships. I mean, if you really booked one more estate planning attorney, one more funeral director, VA rep, family law attorney, I mean, if you had one of each of those things, could you count on each of them sending you a transaction or two a year? And if the answer is yes, then at the end of the year, you have yourself another 10 to 20 deals, right? I just think that could go a long way without much of a heavy lift either,
And what about home inspectors? Home inspectors, because usually when I find a service I like, I usually stick to it. Whether it's an attorney, a lender, something, a contractor, and I've been working with specific home inspectors for my clients, and they've been very good. The feedback's been great, and I've actually had several of the home inspectors reach out to me. One of them switched companies. He said, "Hey, you've given me a lot of business. Here's my new company. Here's my card. If you ever have anyone interested, let me know." So having those people, I've never really talked to them as like a reciprocal kind of business. Like if you have someone who's interested in home inspection, they're not really, and at that point, typically they would be represented by an agent, but maybe they just have curious buyers looking and want a home inspection, or sellers post or pre-selling before they get it on the market. So that's just another service. And I think that's a huge service. I mean, it can make a big impact, because some people just, tell their clients, yeah, go search Google, find a home inspector, but they're not all the same. And especially for me, I found a couple specific companies which are huge, and I've gotten nothing but positive reviews from my client. And the home inspectors have helped keep the deal together, where they could have overwhelmed them with details and things that are wrong with the home, but right at the beginning they say, "Hey, I'm going to look at everything in the home. I'm going to point out some things that are very important, some things that may not be as important, but everything's going to be in the report, so don't get overwhelmed." And having those kind of relationships with someone who's so involved in the process. I mean, the home inspection is huge, so I think that's a big potential as well.
Yeah, and I think you alluded to it earlier, Matt, but some of those home inspectors, maybe when they're seeing a buyer or seller, they're already represented, right? But asking that home inspector, how many for sale by owner inspections do you do every year? I mean, if you had to guess, right? If I'm a seller and I think I can do it by myself without a realtor, maybe I'm thinking about calling a home inspector to have a pre-inspection done on my home, so I know, what is being, what could come up in my buyer's home inspection, right? On the other hand, if you have maybe a FSBO going on and they've already gone on the market, and a buyer's agent brings somebody in, or the buyer brings themselves in, and they're going to have their own home inspection, how many FSBOs do they do home inspections for? Because that could be an introduction to the seller, and it could be an introduction to the buyer if the buyer and the seller find out maybe really early in the transaction that this is just over their head, right? That could go a long way for you too. For sure. What else, guys?
No, I can't help but think that it just all comes down to that initial consult with the buyer, and I think, those of us on the call we're all at, different production levels and different years of experience. And I can't help but think that the most valuable piece of information I got from my coach when I was coached all those years ago was the dilemma of why agents spend so much time consulting with their listing agents, with their listing clients, their seller clients, and they don't spend any time consulting with their buyer clients. So I mean, most of the conversation that we have today relates to buyers, not entirely, but mostly to buyers, what their experience is going to look like. So you need to have a rock solid consultation with every buyer every time, because if you don't, that's where you're just trying to like stick your fingers in the holes and keep everything from coming out the bottom. If you start with that initial consult, they'll know what to expect, and most importantly, what your value is in the transaction. Who really needs a realtor today? You know, I mean, at least that's the public perception. Most sellers think I can just plunk a sign in my front yard for sale by owner, sell it myself for a ton of money. I don't need to pay a big fee. And that is so not true. So the only way that we can, prove our value is to have that consult right from the very beginning. And if you're not having that consult from the very beginning, it's a mistake. And then you have to think about, okay, well, what am I filling the consult with? And it has to be that really important information that, we're talking about today. Set the expectations. And to Kristen's point, who gets blamed? We get blamed. And, we don't have anything to do with processing the mortgage or writing the purchase and sale agreement if they're working with the lender, if they're working with an attorney, but we're going to get blamed, especially if we made the referrals. So have your rock solid paper in hand or PDF it out, on an email. Just have it, create it. If you don't know what to put in it, I'll talk with you about it. I can learn something from you. You can learn something from me. And then we'll be elevating our reputation as realtors. We can move up the food chain, right?
That's it. Well, there's no place to move but up for both lenders and realtors.
I mean, think about who we're down there with. We're at the bottom of the heap with attorneys,
Yeah.
Insurance adjusters.
doctors, and bankers, and car salesmen. We're all the same level.
That's right. And I think you talked about communication, right, Miss, and expectations. Kristen, I hope she's not driving still. She might be, but she remembers this, I'm sure. But a mastermind that we had a few years back at KW when it was in Hanover at the time, and we were talking about buyer consults, and like 25% of the people in that room, because this was pre-COVID, so we were actually all in a room together, if you remember those days, and not a virtual room, but a physical room. And like 2/3 of the room didn't do buyer's consults. And I remember Kristen Bucher's jaw dropped to the point where I thought she broke her jaw on the desk, on the table she was sitting at. And Kate Richards said under her breath, but it was like, she said, "Oh my God, you're going to lose those, you're going to lose those clients." She said it under her breath, but as a statement to the person who mentioned it. And it was just shocking. And I think about, imagine if a pro football team ran plays the same way, where instead of coming together, quick little huddle before the plays run, everybody just walks up to the line. Nobody knows if the QB is going to pass it off or pass it or hand it off, including the running back, right? And then you just say, "Hut," and then everybody just goes in their own directions, right? And does what they want to do. That's kind of the way that we run our own businesses with these little teams and relationships that I'm talking about. So having that play set up so that when a client is referred to that attorney, number one, how do you like to be referred? Should I tell them that you are the best closing attorney, period, that you are the most inexpensive, and that they can reach out to you at any time on your cell, day and night? Or, how do you like to be referred? And I think that your clients, the people that you're working with, should ask the same of you. How do you like to be referred, right? I just think that's, that's really, really important. That's all part of creating that game plan in your huddle so that everybody's running that. Everybody's on the same page about how you expect that play to be run, right? No different than an orchestra. We don't just go in and have all the people in the orchestras playing their own instruments whatever way they want to. They're all playing to a sheet of music, and they're all expected to follow that sheet of music the same exact way. And I think that the best business experiences are just like that.
Right. Yeah.
What about in wrapping it up here, getting towards the end, I keep in my mind coming back to the difference between service and experience, right? If you're if you're providing a great service, and I think a lot of people can confuse the two. So your clients can reach out to me anytime. I'm always available. I'm here. I'm happy to help. I'll go out to your client's house and close at their kitchen table if you want to. There's a big difference, in my opinion, between providing a great service and providing a great experience. To me, service is reactive, right? So if my client, Bill, I promise you that if a client calls every time, I'm going to pick up, right? If a client calls me, I'm reacting to them, right? I'd really rather be proactive, right? And maybe do something so that I can avoid that phone call, them making a phone call down the road. I think, I'm turning this into the Kate Richards show, but about a year ago, I remember her saying, he who calls first, he or she who calls first wins. So if I reach out to a client with a regular update, I win, right? If I don't reach out to the client with that phone call and they reach out to me, a day or two later, then they win. They're asking for that update. So I'm being reactive. Sure, I'm picking up the phone. I can tell them that everything's good. They're still clear to close. I'm providing good service, but I'm not creating a great experience, right? And there's a big difference between the two. So I really think that maybe even challenge some of your own thinking or challenge some of your vendors thinking about that. If an attorney is going to talk with you about the great service they provide, ask them about experience. Ask them proactively what that experience looks like, and see if they can know the difference between service versus experience. What do you guys think about that?
I think that's a great point, Bob. I'm glad you brought that up.
Service
That's what I think.
experience, not the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, hadn't really thought about that. I wrote that down in red.
Yeah.
Book.
I think about a place like, Disney World, right? I mean, that's all about the experience. They have, the mechanics behind Disney World and the experience that's involved with going to Disney World is a lot different than any Six Flags, right? And that's the way that Disney's designed it. They designed their experience to be that way. And, I just think that we as business people too have to create that experience. It's really, really important.
Agree.
So we have about 5 minutes left. Is there anything that anybody would like to add or, change up the topic entirely?
I think one thing we didn't talk about when it comes to your vendor partners, and it's not an expectation as much, but maybe an ask, is that if they love working with you, maybe they could write a public review of how much they love working with you, whether it's on your Facebook or your Google page. I think that would be a really light lift for them and would be a way for them to also add value to your life. So I know, a couple of realtors I work with, we've done it before, and we've written reviews for each other's pages about how wonderful it is to work with the other and how great it is for their clients too. But I think that that's something we don't do enough of, is in supporting each other publicly as well.
Yeah. And that's part of the experience too. There's nothing wrong with explaining to your clients up front what that experience is going to look like. And, if we provide this experience for you, can I count on you for two things? And one might be, if you think we did a 5-star job for you, don't keep it a secret. Tell the world by reviewing us on Yelp or Zillow or Google, whatever you want. And two is everybody that knows you're buying or selling is going to be asking you how your experience is going. Maybe they're looking to buy or sell too. If we're doing a 5-star job for you and we hit on all those points, can I count on you to refer those people over to me? And that's part of the experience, right? Yeah. Good. Well, I did this without Alicia here today. I hope you guys thought that I appreciate you guys being here. It wasn't the same, Bucher's Drive and Alicia's at Mega, but you guys are all here. Hopefully this was a great topic for you guys. I always ask Alicia every week, what do your agents want to talk about? What are some of the recurring hurdles some of your agents might be having? So if there is a topic, something you'd like to talk about, business related, real estate related, mortgage related, housing related, whatever you want to talk about, please don't hesitate. Let Alicia or I know, and we'll make sure we get it taken care of, okay? All right, you guys are the best. Have a great week, guys.
Thank you.
See you later. Bye-bye.